Practicing Luciferianism does not mean worshiping Lucifer. Similarly, practicing heroism does not mean worshiping heroes. Practicing heroism means to embody the qualities of a hero, to act heroically. Similarly, to practice Luciferianism means to embody the qualities of a Lucifer. What does Lucifer mean? It's a Latin word that literally means bringer of light. Light has always been a symbol of knowledge and awareness. Therefore, bringing the light or being a light bearer means to be a force of enlightenment or illumination. If you are practicing Luciferianism, it means that you are seeking out knowledge and seeking to increase your awareness and sharing that with others as well. That's an important element to it. There is an element of altruism in Luciferianism. People often say that Luciferianism is a left-hand path and that it is entirely selfish. That is not true. There is an element in Luciferianism that is sharing knowledge for the benefit of others. And there is an element of personal risk involved. And now let me explain why. You have these systems of power out there in the world that maintain their power structure through hiding knowledge, through twisting knowledge, and through exploiting ignorance. When you share knowledge, that hidden knowledge, that forbidden knowledge, it undermines the established doctrine or power structure of those systems. And therefore, there will often be a backlash from those who benefit from that power structure. They don't want you sharing that knowledge because it undermines that system of control that they've got going, or that they are caught up in, that they benefit from in some way or another, or that they have been brainwashed into. And you have examples in mythology of this. So one classic example of the light bearer archetype is Prometheus. You have Prometheus who cared a lot about humans, but Zeus just didn't mind if they were to die out. He kind of didn't mind if humans died out, or at least remained subservient to him as the king of the Olympian gods. And Prometheus saw a lot more potential in the humans. So Prometheus went and stole the fire of the gods and shared it with humanity, taught humans how to control fire, which gave them a lot more independence. It allowed them to survive. It allowed them to reach their higher potential. Zeus didn't like this. He didn't want that to happen. It was forbidden knowledge for humans. He didn't want them to have that. And therefore, Zeus punished Prometheus for it. Prometheus later escaped through assistance from Hercules and Chiron, but that's another story for another day. Another example of the light bearer archetype would be the serpent in Eden, where the god of Eden, which was El Elyon, would be the Hebrew name, also sometimes in that text referred to as Elohim. He told Adam and Eve not to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. That was the forbidden fruit of knowledge. Now, the serpent came along and he convinced Eve that actually it was good to eat, and that there was that God was deceiving them. Turns out it was true. If you read the Bible, you'll see that she ate from the tree and her eyes were open. She gained the knowledge of good and evil, and she shared it with Adam. And God said, I better kick them out of Eden because otherwise they might also eat from the tree of life and live forever. And therefore they'll be just like us, is what he says. Um, and like as a god, right? And so the serpent was right. The serpent was not lying. And the serpent, because he undermined that system of power that was going on, where the God in that Garden of Eden was keeping humans ignorant in order to keep them as servants, basically, so that they would tend the garden. Um, God punished the serpent for that, for exposing that knowledge, for bringing that knowledge. Now, you have other examples in other mythologies. You have an example of Enki. Now, this one's a little bit different because in the Sumerian mythology, you have Enki who created humanity, and you have his brother Enlil who was like a bureaucrat. Enlil was more like the god in the Garden of Eden, or like Zeus, and he wanted humans to toil for him. And ultimately, when they were complaining too much, he decided he was just going to wipe them out. Now, in order to prevent that from happening, Enki went behind the backs of his brother Enlil and the other gods and taught humans knowledge that they weren't supposed to have, forbidden knowledge that would allow them to survive the natural disasters that Enlil was going to subject them to in an attempt to wipe them out. So, for example, he taught them how to store grains so that they would be able to survive the famine that Enlil was going to subject them to, and it worked. Humans survived the famine because they knew how to store grains. There was, of course, the flood that Enlil was going to use to try and drown them out. And Enki taught them how to survive that as well. And you see these stories repeated over and over, just told by different people throughout the ages, right? But that's another example. Now, Enki didn't have the same level of backlash because he was a god, right? And so they didn't have the power to punish him in that same way. But you have this example of the lightbearer archetype being played out not just in mythologies. Actually, let me do another one before I move on. Pandora is another example that you don't often hear about. You hear about Prometheus and you hear about the serpent in Eden and you hear about Enki, but Pandora, I think, is an overlooked light bearer archetype. Now, that story is often used to demonize curiosity. It's used to demonize seeking after knowledge, right? Because Pandora was given this box, right? And told, do not open it. But she was curious. She wanted to know what was in there. She sought after that forbidden knowledge, and she dared. She had the courage to open that box. Now, all sorts of horrible things came out of there, but not only horrible things came out of there. There was something beautiful that came out of there as well. Hope is usually what they refer to that, but it was a lot of horrible things, and also some beautiful things as well came out of there. Now, you often hear this being used to say, well, she shouldn't have done that, right? Because she unleashed all these horrible things into the world. Well, I like to look at it a different way. I see these horrible things as the disturbing truths that people don't want to recognize. They want to close their eyes and they want to pretend that it's not there. But it is. It's there, whether you look at it or not. And opening that box opened her eyes to the awareness of these disturbing or uncomfortable truths. Now, let me ask you a question. Would you rather have a comforting lie and live with that comforting lie, or would you rather have an uncomfortable truth and know and be able to make an informed decision because now you have that knowledge? Depends on who you are. If you are like Cypher from the Matrix, maybe you want that blissful ignorance, right? But if you're like me, if you are like a lot of Luciferians, you will seek after that truth, even if it ends up being uncomfortable. And you see this light bearer archetype playing out in not just mythology, as I was saying before, but also in the lives of individual humans. A classic example that I like to bring up is Galileo. He dared to share knowledge from his experiments that he was doing, his scientific experiments and his observations. And he said things about the universe that disagreed with the established doctrines of the Roman Catholic Church. Now, the Roman Catholic Church at that time was immensely powerful. And him sharing that information, that knowledge that he had gained through the scientific method about the universe, it undermined the power structure of the Roman Catholic Church, and therefore he faced a backlash from from the church. He was actually threatened with death unless he recanted. So he recanted in order to save his skin, but the knowledge was already out there. Like Pandora's box, it had already been opened. You can't put it back in the box. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. The genie doesn't go back in the bottle. And so he did recant in order to save his skin so that he could survive. But the knowledge was already out there. And later on, many, many, many years later, eventually he was exonerated. And the Roman Catholic Church actually apologized formally for what they did to Galileo. But, that was long after he had died. But that is one example of the light bearer archetype playing out in the life of an individual human. So he was a Lucifer in that sense. He was a light bearer. Now, he may not have recognized himself as such, or he may not have described himself as such using those explicit terms. But if we understand the meaning of the word Lucifer and the light bearer archetype, then he absolutely was embodying that light bearer archetype. Now, there are other whistleblowers and tellers of truth, those who have shared knowledge with others, those who have helped people gain greater levels of awareness. And those are all different ways that people have embodied the light bearer archetype in their own unique way. And as a Luciferian, I seek to embody the light bearer archetype in my own unique way as well. And part of what I'm doing in this channel, this YouTube channel, is to share that knowledge with others, to share what I've learned, and hopefully you can benefit from it in some way, that you can gain some value from that, from the knowledge, from the information that I'm sharing. And apply it in your life in some way to emancipate yourself from ignorance, to take more control over your life, to make informed decisions, to gain an edge through using knowledge that has been hidden away, occult knowledge that is used by a lot of people who are in positions of power, but they're doing it covertly. And they don't want you to know that information because they want to have that edge. And you knowing that information, you understanding those occult techniques, these esoteric practices, that gives you an edge as well. That undermines their power structure in some way. And that is what I hope to do with this YouTube channel, that I'm sharing this knowledge with you, that I seek to embody the light bearer archetype in my own unique way. Now, each of you will have opportunities presented to you that you can become a light bearer in your own unique way, depending on the type of knowledge that you have found yourself um, coming across, or that you have intentionally sought out, and the types of situations you find yourself in which you could share knowledge that will help others to become more free, to take control over their lives, to empower them. And that's why I say that Luciferianism is not a selfish religion or a selfish path or philosophy. It is, like I said, there's an element of altruism there, and there's an element of personal risk involved when you share that knowledge. In another video, I talked about King Sejong. He was a king in what we now call Korea, and he shared information that helped empower the the people, the common people, and it undermined the power structure of the other aristocrats, and they didn't like it. But the thing is, similarly to Enki, he was the king, so they couldn't really do anything about it. Although, once he passed and his successor came in, his successor banned some of that knowledge that he had shared with people, but it was already out there. He couldn't get rid of it. And what I'm talking specifically is the Hangul alphabet, because before King Sejong, the commoner, the working class individual, the citizen, were almost completely illiterate, while the ruling class, they were literate. And King Sejong, he actually cared about the people, and he created this alphabet called Hangul and shared it with people, with the working class people, his citizens, so that they could become literate and they would have those tools available to them so that they could acquire knowledge, so that they could share knowledge. And in that way, he embodied the light bearer archetype in his own unique way, based on the circumstances he found himself in. Do you see what I'm saying here? So, you as an individual, if you consider yourself a Luciferian, you will discover ways in which sharing knowledge can help in that way, that you can become a Lucifer in your own right, to embody that light bearer archetype. Now, if you want to learn more about Luciferianism, if you want to learn some of this hidden and forbidden knowledge, this occult knowledge, and the word occult just means hidden. It is knowledge that when we practice it, it is often, people are often ridiculed for it. and considered to be antisocial often. And in a way, it is. It's a revolution. It's taking knowledge that has been suppressed or downplayed or propagandized against because it gives you personal power, and it makes systems such as institutionalized religions, it makes it less important, right? If you can do these things for yourself, you don't need an intercessor. You don't need these priests and authority figures. You can connect yourself. You can connect with sources of knowledge directly and explore the spiritual realms yourself through lucid dreaming, astral projection, through systems of accessing knowledge that are non standard, like divination, such as through like tarot or through I Ching, for example. If you want to learn this stuff, you can go to noviceordoluciferii.org, and that is a system, and the word Novus Ordo Luciferi, that is Latin, and in English it means the new order of light bearers, and the participants, the members, are the light bearers. We are the light bearers. It's not an order devoted to worshiping some external entity called Lucifer. It's about devoting yourself to becoming a light bearer. You are the light bearer. And if you want to learn more about that, go to noviceordoluciferii.org, and the link is in the description. And for just $5 a month, you can participate in a community of people who are practicing these occult arts. It is, there are over 40 hours of recorded video lessons that have been taught to members. And those videos are part of the back catalog, which you can now take as courses if you decide to become a member of the NOL, the Novus Ordo Luciferi. And you can also watch a bunch of free videos on my YouTube channel here. I have about 300 videos on this channel that are all free. I've had this channel for just over 15 years now, and I continue to post new videos, sharing my perspective, sharing my knowledge. And if you enjoy that and you want to take it to the next level, I highly encourage you to join the Novus Ordo Luciferi, become part of the community of people who have dedicated themselves to learning a system of occultism that I've developed called Luciferian alchemy, but also exploring on their own as well, and sharing that exploration with other members, and being part of the community of people that support one another in these explorations. So I hope you found this video enlightening. And if you did, then please subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell. And if you want to be notified when I'm going to be doing a live stream, for example, go to the Patreon, and the link is also in there. And if you even just become a free follower of the Patreon, you'll get an email letting you know when there's a new live stream coming up. And that way you won't miss it when I'm going live, and we can have a direct interaction. You can ask questions, you can share your thoughts and ideas, and we can have a back and forth And until next time, everyone, stay lucid.